Hey there, I'm Axia. I'm a 3D artist with a deep passion for non-photorealistic rendering, or NPR. NPR has really taken off in recent years, especially since the release of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse in 2018. It is wild to think that movie is already a classic. But for me, the journey into NPR started even earlier. Back when I first saw Dylan Wu Katsuwatch animations based on Overwatch. I had no idea that years later I would be diving deep into the world of NPR myself. NPR covers a huge spectrum of style and techniques, from the bold lines of comic books to the soft, flowing strokes of watercolor, and of course, the ever popular anime style. As a huge anime fan, it is probably no surprise that this style has been my main focus since I started working with Blender. After a lot of experimenting, I have finally nailed down a workflow that gets me the exact look I've been aiming for. And today, I'm going to share that process with you. This tutorial is split into two big parts. First, we will dive into shading, and then we will move on to the compositing. Trust me, compositing is where the real magic happens, and it is often overlooked. Okay, let's get started with the shaders. You can follow along with your own models or use the ones I provided. Check the description for the download link. Let's jump in. Before we dive into shading, I highly recommend enabling the Node Wrangler add-on. It is incredibly useful when working with nodes in Blender and will make your workflow a lot smoother. Once you've imported or created the model you want to shade, let's open up the shader editor and switch to the rendered view. This will give us a real-time preview of the change we are making. And don't forget to add lighting. I will talk more about how important light is later. Let's kick things off by opening the shader editor in Blender. Switch the new window to shader editor mode. Next up, let's add a material to our object. I'm going to start with the cube and name the material Basic. You can apply the same material to other objects like the sphere by just dragging and dropping it onto them. Now let's dive into creating our NPR shader. First thing, we are going to delete the principal BSDF node. We don't need that here. Instead, we will add the diffuse shader node, a shader to RPG node, and a color ramp node. For the color ramp, switch the interpolation from linear to constant. This setup will let us control the tones of our object, black representing the shadow and white for the light. You can add more tones using the plus button, but for this tutorial, we will keep it simple. With the color ramp, you can adjust how much light and shadow you want. Remember, in NPR, lighting is key since it directly affects the form and style of your tones. While you can control the object's color directly through the color ramp, I find that approach a bit limiting. Instead, I prefer using a mixed color node for more flexibility. Connect the color ramp to the FAC input of the mixed color node. Now, the mixed color node will control the colors of your shader. You will notice that A input represents the shadow, while the B input represents the light. Personally, I find it counterintuitive to have the shadow on top, so let's fix that by adding an invert node. Problem solved. For even more control, I like to use RGB nodes. If you are like me and enjoy keeping things organized, you can even rename your nodes using the F2 shortcut. Now that we've set up the main color of our shader, let's tidy things up. We will frame this node by selecting them and pressing Ctrl J, just like joining object in viewport. Let's name this frame main color to keep everything clear. With that, our base color setup is done. Next, let's move on to add some highlight to really make this shader pop. We will start by introducing a glossy BSDF node. This will help us create those sharp, reflective highlights that give our object a bit more depth. Just like we did with the diffuse shader, we will connect a shader to RGB node and a color ramp node. Again, with the color ramp, interpolation to constant. This will allow us to control the sharpness and placement of our highlights. Here is a quick tip. You can use Ctrl Shift left click on the color ramp to preview how it affects the highlight. This way, you are not just guessing, you can see exactly what's happening in real time. You will notice that the glossy node reacts differently to light compared to the diffuse node. It is easy to go overboard with highlight, so take your time tweaking it. Sometimes, simply moving your light source can help you get the highlight exactly where you want it to be. Once you are happy with how the highlights look, group all the nodes together into a frame. Press Ctrl G to frame them and let's name it highlights for easy references. Now it is time to mix the main color with the highlights. We will use a mix color node for this. Here is a quick tip. Use Alt right click to automatically connect nodes, but keep in mind that it doesn't always connect to the right input, so double check your connections. If you are familiar with Photoshop or other digital art software, you will notice that the mix color modes are similar to layer blend modes. For the highlights, instead of using the default mix mode, switch it to lighten. Now, by adjusting the FAC value, you can control how pronounced or subtle the highlights are. Fine-tune it until you achieve the look you are going for. One of the great things about NPR is the freedom it gives you. There's really no right or wrong way to do it. So don't hesitate to play around with the settings. Experiment with your own values and make this shader truly yours. Let your creativity run wild. Alright, the next element we will add is a rim light. To do this, we will use a layer weight node combined with a color ramp, again set to constant interpolation. Now, a layer weight node can be a bit tricky to control. It is even more sensitive than the glossy node, so take your time with it. This node is great not just for rim light, but also for adding reflections. I've got a rim light on the sphere, but on the cube, it looks more like a reflection. If I switch the input from Fresnel to facing, let's see if that improves things. Not much of a difference, but that's okay. To integrate with the rest of the shader, we will follow the same process as before. Just duplicate the mix color node and connect the color ramp to it. The effect might not be perfect on the cube, but it is looking good on the sphere. Now let's move on to some line art. I'm going to show you my favorite method for creating outlines. First, make sure the objects you want to outline are in a collection. Then add a new object to the scene, a grease pencil object, collection line art. I realized I didn't have the correct collection active when setting this up, but no worries, there is an easy fix. Select the line art object, go to the modifier, choose the line art, and then select the correct collection. The only inconvenience about using grease pencil for line art is that it generates the outline based on the camera's point of view. To see how it works, hit F12 to render the frame, and you will see the look of it. You can adjust the thickness of the lines, and once again, I encourage you to experiment with the settings. A particularly interesting option is the light reference, which enables an illumination filter, making the outline only appear in light or shadow. It is similar to line weight in traditional drawing. Grease pencil line art also comes with its own material, which you can tweak in the material properties. To change the line color, make sure to adjust the base color under the stroke category. Changing the fill color won't have any effect here. With that, our shader is complete. Don't forget to organize the rim light nodes into a frame for neatness. This wraps up this part of the tutorial. In the next video, we will dive into creating a metallic shader and adding texture to highlights. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something new. If you create something awesome with this technique, I would love to see it. Tag me on social media. Until next time.